Hi there everybody, and thanks for joining me on this short pre-Christmas episode of The Art of Procurement. I'm the host of Art of Procurement, Philip Ideson. I wanted to take a few moments, first of all, as we come up to the holidays and the New Year break, to just thank you for being a part of Art of Procurement. And a thank you for helping to spread the word. That's really the main way that the podcast grows. And for us, growth looks like, an opportunity to help and to impact as many procurement professionals as possible as we look, we consider that we're all kind of in this together, that we succeed and we fail as a profession collectively rather than individually. That's something that we're really passionate about, helping from the podcast perspective in touching as many procurement pros as possible. The listenership actually this year is up about 20%, and it's pretty incredible, but the podcast is listened to by the equivalent of the audience at the largest of procurement conferences every single day of the week. So we're going to take a few days of downtime here over the holidays, but then we're going to be back at it, working to make the podcast better than ever in 2020. Last year, I wrote an annual letter. I did that for the first time, and it was reflecting on the health of the procurement profession and my own entrepreneurial journey. So I'm starting to put some thought into a new letter for the end of 2019. It's probably going to come out a couple of days before the end of the year. And, it's the end of the decade too, so it's a great time to reflect on the past and to consider what's next. Well, there's three main themes at the forefront of my reflection. So firstly, I can't help but wonder if we are evolving the procurement value proposition fast enough. When you look back 10 years, 5 years, even 2 years, all the fanciful projections on what procurement's going to look like in 2020. And I actually wrote about this in a post with Gordon Donovan now 3 years ago called Days of Future Past. So we reviewed a number of industry reports from between 2002 and 2015. And the themes in those industry reports, remember some of them went back all the way to 2002, were generally that technology is going to set us free as a profession, that our procurement KPIs are going to change and savings will be a lot less important, that skill sets are going to change and the traditional buyer role will no longer exist, and actually procurement may disappear altogether, that business units will outsource strategic procurement because they see procurement as an inhibitor rather than an enabler of their objectives. So they kind of take things into their own hands. So those are some of the projections that that were coming our way for 2020. The reality, I think, is that certainly for the masses, that not a lot has changed. So we're still fighting the good fight, but so many organizations are still struggling to evolve from a tactical to a strategic role. And I want to say doing that at scale. So organizations have been able to do that or some have for specific categories and specific teams. But, that's based on a lot of specific high-achieving staff, what they're struggling still to do. And I don't want to say everybody, because as I talk about in a minute, there are some organizations that have cracked this. But most are struggling to do it at scale where it impacts their entire performance of their procurement team. So the other challenge that we have is that we're still on this hamster wheel where we're really following economic cycles of our businesses. So it'll go from saving money at all costs being the burning platform to value beyond savings as the business conditions change, and then back to saving money at all costs again. The second theme that's really that I'm thinking about is investment in startups and emerging technology in the procurement space. And it's happening like never before. Perhaps it's in some part spurred by the success of Cooper, which 3x their share price almost, maybe 2.5x their share price in 2019. So it's showing that there is a lot of opportunity to have some outsized returns in procurement. I think perhaps it's also because, during most of the 2010s, a lot of investment was in IT, HR, marketing, and sales technologies. And now investors are waking up to procurement as being a little bit of a sleeping giant. A lot of the technologies they may be investing in, they're not actually new technologies, but the businesses they're supporting are brand new use cases, contextualized for procurement for the first time, having worked successfully in other areas. The startups that we see, they're geographically diverse. They all have the potential to change what our procurement normal is. So we do need to be ready and to embrace these technologies and find new ways for us to use them that will ultimately elevate our role. We're actually going to be sharing a series. I think it's going to be late January of next year with a number of these startups. We have a startup series coming, so I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. Now, the third thing I'm thinking about is the gap between those procurement organizations that have cracked the code and those that haven't. That gap is getting wider. There's a lot of reasons for this, but if I was to nail it down to one thing, like one primary reason why that gap is getting bigger, and when I look at the ones who are truly leading the way for the procurement function, they're manically obsessed with aligning their performance with the actual needs of the business. And when I say needs, I emphasize that purposely, actual needs of the business, because what I don't mean is current metrics. That's a really important distinction because our current metrics are often not aligned with the actual needs of the business. So think savings, we're still mostly measured on savings when you're working with a marketer. The marketer doesn't really care about savings. So, they're looking at this on a micro level. Yes, some areas of the business do care about savings, so let's measure that as the performance measure, but in other areas of the business, they're not. So let's focus on other ways so we can demonstrate the value that we bring. Procurement teams that have that level of impact, they think and they act like a services business. They don't think and act like a business function. So they use, as an example, advanced techniques that may be deployed by their sales and marketing colleagues to understand target stakeholders. They bring those into procurement. It's as if we're guiding stakeholders through a sales funnel. They also recognize that most stakeholders have already made up their mind on a supplier or a supplier shortlist before they've ever engaged with procurement. And so they position procurement earlier in the engagement process. They realize that it's technology that is actually making that challenge harder, because the way that people buy, just people in general, is changing. They are going and researching solutions on their own before they ever talk to somebody, before they ever talk to a supplier. So the procurement function who's doing really well and kind of leading the way it's so much about engagement, so much about business partnering, so that their first port of call when they're doing that research is for help from procurement to do the research rather than doing it on their own. The good news is that a lot of what these companies are doing can actually be codified. So we've codified these things. We've been working on this a long time at Art of Procurement to codify these into a new procurement framework. And we're going to be putting the finishing touches of that over the break. And then I'm going to be starting to talk about it earlier in the new year. We are really excited about this. So you heard it here first. And as soon as it's ready to go early in the new year, I will certainly be letting you know. So finally, when I think about Art of Procurement as a business, 2019 is really the year when everything finally started to come together. So long-time listeners might recall that at the beginning of 2019, so really we were thinking and putting this into practice at the end of 2018, we consolidated all of our brands. We had Palanbridge, which is was our consulting offer. We had Catalysco, which is where we did all of our learning and development projects. We brought all that together into the Art of Procurement brand under one single umbrella. So it allowed us to start telling a better story of what we do and how we help procurement leaders. And I really think that is starting to show the benefits of why we did that. That was only the start, though. We're actually also going to be working over the break here on a website refresh, so we'll be a lot more specific about what we do and how we can help. That's, I think, one of the things that is a challenge with the current website. We did a great job, I think, we're really happy in the job that we did in pulling things together under a single umbrella, but it's not as clear as it could be about how we can help. So that's going to change for 2020. We're certainly not resting on our laurels, but as a business, it's really nice to be able to look forward with confidence and plan forward and think strategically. The early years of a startup can be pretty messy and can be very much about what's the next 2 or 3 months going to look like. And, I've certainly experienced that for a number of years, but this is the first time we're really looking forward and have the opportunity to invest back in the business. So really excited about what's to come for 2020. So with all that being said, I do just want to wrap up and say, for all of our listeners, for all of our clients, all of our partners, I just want to thank you so much for your support in 2019. We are so much looking forward to being back in 2020. And until then, I just hope that you have a wonderful holiday time and come back refreshed, ready to go at the beginning of the new year. Until we speak again, just be safe and we'll talk again soon. Hi there, I want to thank you for tuning in to today's podcast. You can check out all of our back catalogue at artofprocurement.com/podcast, where you can also subscribe to our newsletter to make sure that you never miss an episode. And if you found value in today's show, I'd love if you would tell a peer, or perhaps go and rate and review by going to artofprocurement.com/review. Word of mouth really is the best way to help the podcast grow, and if you're able to do either one of those things, I would truly appreciate it.